On today's show, we will be engaging a legal practitioner in the person of Barrister Adenike Eche. Barrister Adenike Eche, good morning and welcome to Business Insight.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Oh, it's good to see your face, live from our studio.
Thank you.
Yes, just so that we are sure, Barrister Adenike Eche is a corporate and property lawyer, and she does have qualifications in other areas. She has a master's degree in industrial relations, and so many other things that are very relevant to the topic we want to talk about today. But let's start on a very simple note. When we're talking about property transaction processes, what are we really talking about?
Um, we have to look at different things when we're talking about property transactions. We have to look at the documents. We have to look at the parties, that want to engage in these transactions. And we also have to look at the middleman, the middleman that brings the parties together. More importantly, the documents and the due diligence that goes into, purchasing these properties. So those are basically the things that we need to look into.
Yes, so we're talking about the property space here in Nigeria, land, buildings, and all of the things that are along this line. To find a property, what are the advice you would give, a potential business person or an investor or someone who just wants to buy a property? It is often said that land or buildings are more valuable in certain parts of the states, maybe in Lagos or of the country, than in other parts. What are the tips you can give people in that area?
Okay, so usually I always encourage or advise my clients that they shouldn't look at the actually the amount of money that they're using to purchase this property. They should focus on the value. They should focus on the location because this location really matters when you are investing. Let's say, for example, if you invest in Ogba. Ogba is a very good area in Lagos State. Um, the same amount you're going to use in building the structure in Ogba is still the same amount you're going to use in building the structure in Allen. Though um, we have to also consider the cost of purchasing these properties in Allen and cost purchasing this property in Ogba. So the most important thing is the value that comes, with this investment after you purchase them.
Now,
So I give an instance. Let's say, for example, you want to buy property for rentals. So you buy property for rentals on Allen, maybe at 120 million or at 130 million. But at Ogba, you can buy the same property at maybe let's say 70 million. We're talking about the same building, the same structure, maybe 70 to 80. But when it now comes to you making your returns, that is return on investment, you have to now compare how much you're renting at Allen and how much you're renting at Ogba. It's quite different. So you get to make your initial investment back quickly at Allen, while you get to make your initial investment back, not as quick as you have made it in Allen. So I always say that don't focus on the money that you want to invest at the initial start. Just look at the end result of what you're going to get eventually. So I always advise that consider the location when you are investing.
yeah, thank you very much. In the spirit of considering the location, is there anything like a good location and a bad location? If so, what are good locations, the fundamental element of good locations, and what are fundamental elements of a bad location?
When we talk about location, we have to look at different things. Different things. Let's say, for example, when it rains, what's going to happen to your property or to the structure, when it rains. Some people have, bad roads, going into the property. It's really like a tussle for them. So I always, encourage people when you're looking at location, look at the security. Also, I always consider electricity when we are looking at this. What is the electricity? What are people talking about the electricity in the area? Then, aside the security as well, you have to look at the return on your investment. The location is really key. Is it central? Let's give an instance. Ikeja is central in Lagos State. To get to the island, to get to other areas of the mainland, Ikeja is the central point. So I always love like you being at the central point. And when we are looking at the island as well, Lekki seems to be like the middle, the center of the highland. Should I say Lekki or VI? So, okay, let's just pick VI. So VI is sort of the central in the sense that it's not far from Ikoyi, it's not far from Lekki. You can always get around. So location really matters when you want to purchase a property or you want to sell a property. People on the mainland, what would they prefer? They also have to consider the traffic linking every areas together. So when you're investing in properties, these are the key factors that people look at, before they purchase your property.
Now,
so location is for me the key aspect of investing in any property in Lagos State.
yeah, yes.
It's
Still talking
also
about.
let me put this in.
Okay.
It also determines the registration you're going to be making. People are not aware that the government, Lagos State government, or should I say land registry in Lagos State, they consider different values for this area. So you also have to ensure that your lawyer explains to you, the expectations regarding the fees you are going to be paying in respect to the property you purchase.
Oh, thank you very much for that. From all that you have said now, it's almost as if these tips you give are also very important when placing value on a property as someone who wants to sell. Initially, I talked about someone who wants to buy or someone who wants to invest. But for people who also have landed property or who have buildings, and these are the things you need to factor in when you want to place a value or want to place a price on whatever it is that you're selling. But as I asked earlier, is there anything really as a bad location? You have mentioned that maybe locations that are not environmentally friendly, locations where the security is not tight, maybe considered as bad location. But let's not also look at places that are not central. For example, you mentioned Allen, you mentioned Ikoyi, VI, the Lekki parts of the Lagos Island, but there are also, the hinterlands. There are places that are, are these places necessarily bad location, or does it depend on the use for the property in the first place?
Actually, you won't call them bad locations. I think it's more like um your return on investment or the access it gives you to go to work every day. We have to come to the understanding that Lagos State is quite crowded, and going to work in the morning is not always the easiest thing. Let's just consider those that work in Ikorodu. Sorry, those that work on the highland and live in Ikorodu. Obviously, you have a true experience because I've worked on the highland, before. I started my own legal firm. I understood that some people don't even go home until weekends because of the distance between where they live and the distance to where they work. So I always say that location necessarily is not about the location being bad, but it's about the other factors that comes in when you live in these areas. You also mentioned I didn't necessarily bad. If we talk about it on the bad aspect, I would say that we should also look at the value that is placed on these properties. I'm pushing in the value more because at the point of selling, because you just mentioned about the buyers, at the point of selling, what are you going to get when you're selling the same property? If we don't really put this factors in, we will not appreciate what I'm talking about, because I've seen it from different perspective of a buyer and a seller.
Thank you.
If you have the same thing, the only difference is I'll have to put this in, and that is where the mistake always comes in. The only difference is that, at the initial stage when people are buying, they buy based on what they have. So we cannot say that it is necessarily bad if you're investing that way,
Thank you.
because at the point of purchase, that is what you have. But I always encourage that if you can, maybe put in more effort to get something that is going to give you that value that you require in the future, then it is always important that you place, importance on the location.
Thank you very much. I think I understand what you were trying to say there very, very, deeply, because it depends on the value you are getting for your money or the amount of money you have at that point in time compared to where you are getting. For example, based on how central the location is, how secure the area is, and electricity and some other things. If you get a property in a place like Ikoyi, for 100 million naira or 200 million naira, some people still see that as a fair deal. Whereas if you get a property in some parts of Ikorodu, in some deep parts of Ikorodu for 10 million naira, 20 million naira, some people see it as not getting value
Yeah.
for your money compared to the kind of land you are getting at that point in time. But I also asked that question because let's look at use now, because a good number of times when people buy things, they don't factor in what they want to use that thing for. For example, largely a good number of people buy lands and property for living, for rent, and so. But what about people that want to buy for farming? If you want to buy for farming, you don't necessarily need to buy in a central area, for example.
Oh,
That's the point I was trying to. That's the
yes.
reason for asking that question. That people should also factor in what they
Okay,
want to
now
use the property for. Yes.
that's the
Yes.
commercial aspect of it. Okay, if we're reasoning from that angle, okay, of course, it's going to bring that value that you are expecting, from the investments, which is still what I'm talking about. It's all about the value. It depends on what you want to do with the property. In as much as you factor in the value that would come in afterwards, then it's fair. It's fair.
Okay, so let us now get into that concept of buying for the future, because this concept is often used when maybe real estate lawyers or real estate marketers want to talk about their property. They tell you, buy in this area now. It's not yet developed. It's not yet secure, but in the next 5 years, this will be happening. Please explain that concept, because it looks as if this concept has been used to cheat a good number of investors who want to go into the property world.
I think my observation regarding that question is I'll break it down. Sometimes, yes, this advice is given to clients because you can already foresee the future based on the informations that you get. So you advise clients that, okay, just invest here. The price is still reasonable. You can buy 10 plots. You can buy 1 acre. 1 acre is six plots. So you can advise as much as your client is willing to invest. But in Lagos State, I'm focusing in Lagos State because I'm based in Lagos, so I have more information about Lagos State lands. Most of these mistakes has happened, and clients, or should I say, investors, are being scammed, because they don't have the necessary information. Usually, some of these land are affordable because the seller already knows the issue attached to the land. And sometimes even the sellers, they are not aware of the problem that is attached to them. When I say problems or issues, I'm talking about land under government acquisition or committed lands. Land under government acquisitions and committed lands. Once you purchase this property, it's not something that you can recover. You cannot recover your money. You cannot fight the government because it's clearly under government acquisition and committed land. But because necessary due diligence was not done, it's going to affect the buyer. it's not going to affect the seller because the seller is not going to return the money. Even if you want to take the seller to the police station or to the seller can claim that he himself, this is the family land. It was he inherited it, is not aware that the land is under committed area. Though this does not also mean that the seller might not be guilty of such accusation, because it is the duty of the seller as well to also do due diligence. When I mean due diligence, what are the necessary due diligence? Even if these titles are not registered, due diligence is you going to Surveyor General's office. If people usually try to do this survey plan without registering it, they just pay the easy amount of money that someone just bill them, and then they just get a survey plan. But the survey plan in the real sense is not registered. But if your survey plan is registered, or if you conduct the necessary search that you're meant to do, it will reveal to you at the Surveyor General's office that that the land you're about to purchase or the land you have purchased is under government acquisition or committed land. So these are the issues that result in investors being scammed. They see the affordable land, they invest more. Some people even buy 20 plus, some can buy 10 acres just because they have found a cheaper land, and then they run into these errors that could have been avoided if they have done the right thing.
Yes, thank you very much for pointing that out. It is very, very important that if you are, going into the real estate business, whether as a buyer or a seller, you really understand that. But let us now get back to this concept of buying for the future, which is, as I mentioned earlier, how a good number of real estate marketers market their properties. Is it really true that landed property or buildings appreciate as much as they say they do? And some people have also bought landed properties in that spirit, and they've not seen the expected appreciation. They say, in the next 5 years, how do you even know if a property will appreciate at a particular rate? How do you know the rate at which a property will appreciate before you even get into it?
What people usually consider is the development coming to that area. When you consider the development coming to that area, you already know that, okay, if this refinery is coming to this area, if this university is coming to this area, if these companies are coming to this area, then it means that people are going to be, investing in that property. It's always, the law that, when demand increases, or when demand increases, is also push the supply, that comes to that market. So just like in properties, when developments are coming into a certain area, good roads is coming into a certain area, definitely that area would be a promising area in the future. So these are the factors that advisors, or should I say lawyers, not necessarily lawyers, agents, sometimes they advise these things. They already know the things that are coming to the area, so they will advise their client that do this now before this appreciates, because by the time this development comes in, it's going to drive investments to this area. And by then, if you're an investor that is, planning to, sell in the future, you can buy to resell. So that's the reason why these are the factors that people consider before they advise their clients to invest for the future.
Now, let's get back to getting a property in the first place, so identifying a property to buy. Where would you advise someone who wants a land or a building to go to get legit information about available properties, legitimately available properties? Do you go straight to family members? Do you go through agents? Do you go through companies? Where exactly is the safest place to go to if you want to buy a property in Lagos?
Okay, I think I'll start by saying that we have to consider the different documentation attached to the property you want to buy. So there are some lands, or there are some properties that come with deed of conveyance.
Okay, so
There are
my
some
question,
property that comes with
Adenike, my
certificate of
question is
occupancy.
that where do you even find properties? For example, if I'm a foreigner, I come into Nigeria, I need a place, a land. Where do I go to? Do I go to tell people, do I tell people so they take me to families? I know people buy property from families. Do I go to real estate companies? Are they the safest? Do I go straight to the government? You know, where do you even get these properties in the first place?
To get the properties, it's you have mentioned it all. You can go to agents, you can go to family, you can go to your lawyer. I would advise you to go to your lawyer because when you go to your lawyer will be able to find the best property suitable for what you want to do. So depending on the your intentions, depending on the kind of investment you want to make, your lawyer will be able to scrutinize every details, every information before your lawyer would advise you to purchase the property. So agents, sometimes I will not say all agents or all property companies, sometimes for their own, gains and their own commission, they just advise based on what they know. But they don't have all the details because this is not what they do. They only sell. They don't know the details regarding the law attached to what you're buying. So it might not be best for you to go to them. It's best for you to find a lawyer, tell the lawyer what you want to do with the property, whether you want to build to rent or you want to build to resell. And then the lawyer can advise you on the appropriate location fit for your money and for the purpose.
Now, let us now get to the next process, which I believe is making an offer. After you've identified the property you want to buy or that you're interested in, you need to make some sort of offer or know what the value is in terms of money. Now, what are the things you think people should know when making offers so that they won't be cheated and they would get value for their money in the real estate world?
Um, when you're making an offer to, are you talking in terms of the buyer or the seller?
Well, I am talking in terms of the buyer now. Say you want to buy a property, you've identified this property, they tell you this is how much it is. What are the things, when you want to negotiate or when you want to agree at a price, what are the things you should factor in? Because, of course, people want to, on the part of the seller, you want to make the most profit out of the parcel of land you have. As the buyer also, you want to get the most value for your money. So help us navigate that terrain.
I think the most important thing is to understand the documentation on your land because the documentation determines the value. Um, if your land if your land is just having a family receipt and a survey plan, of course that land has no value compared to the land that has a certificate of occupancy or a deed of conveyance. So you must first get that information right to understand that, oh, what do I have in this property? Is it a family receipt? Is it a deed of conveyance or is it a certificate of occupancy? Because that is the ultimate cost of value for your land. So if you are being sorted with that information, you also have to consider the location, like I was discussing earlier. The location is also a very, very big factor, attached to, the value of the land. So the documentation and the location, they are the key factors that you need to consider when you're being offered a certain um, um, value for the land.
Yes, so let's now touch on documentation. You have mentioned family receipts, survey plan, and what are all the documents that needs to exchange hands when you're doing property transaction, especially in a place like Lagos? Because some people, they think they bought a land until they ask them for certain documentations and they can't even provide it. So help us list the documentations that the seller must provide to the buyer and the buyer must take possession of or sign before a successful real estate deal has been made.
Well, that depends on what you are buying, because at the time of purchase, you would have been informed. The first thing that you request for is the documentation. You want to know the documentation that is attached to that property. So sometimes the documentation comes with just family receipt. They'll tell you that, oh, this land has family receipt and a survey plan. But mind you, the survey plan is not registered. And sometimes the documentation comes with a deed of conveyance or certificate of occupancy. The difference between this is that when your property comes with a deed of conveyance or certificate of occupancy, that is if the seller has certificate of occupancy or deed of conveyance. As the buyer, what you'll be required to do after you purchase that property is to get governor's consent. But as a
hold on, Adenike.
purchaser
Please, let's go on a
buying,
break. We need to go on a break now. When we get back from the break, you pick it up from governor's consent. I remember that. You were just about to talk about that, but
okay,
this is Business
that's
Insights.
right.
We'll be right back.
That's right. That's right.
Welcome back to Business Insight on Souk News. I am Olaoluwa Awe, and just before we went on that break, we started a conversation on the property transaction process here in Nigeria, especially in Lagos, the commercial capital of the country. But then we have been talking about a good number of documents that you need to have before a proper property transaction is done. And the corporate and property lawyer on the show, Adenike Eiche, has been doing a fine job. I understand that she is back now. She just touched on governor's consent. That is what she will be talking about right now. Welcome back, Adenike Eiche.
Thank you.
Yes, you started a conversation on governor's consent. Please go
Earlier,
ahead.
okay, earlier I was talking about the types of documents that you would be given when you want to purchase the property or when you have purchased the property. So deed of conveyance, I mentioned deed of conveyance and certificate of occupancy. These are documents that are legal documents that gives you the legal title on your property. So as a purchaser, when you purchase and you're given a certificate of occupancy, maybe from the assigner or from the seller, the requirements that you are meant to undertake is to, register the deed of assignment, that was signed between the buyer and the seller. In the deed of assignment, they call it assigner and assignee. So when you register that, what you get is governor's consent. So with governor's consent, that gives you that right to assign that same property in case you want to sell that property in the future. It gives you the right to assign the property to another buyer. But when you are purchasing a property that comes with just a survey plan and a family receipt, the important thing that you need to know regarding family receipt is that sometimes some buyer would purchase a property from a seller that purchased from the family. I want to make this very clear.
Okay.
I will say that again. A buyer purchases the property from a seller that purchased that same property from the family. So when you do this as an investor, it is important for you to know that while buying such property, you inquire from the seller to take you to the buyer,
Okay.
to the original owner of the property, sorry. You ask the seller to introduce you to the original owner of that property. That is the original family that sold to the seller. So when you're being introduced to the family, you ask the family to write another receipt in your own name.
Okay.
Not in the name of the seller. Usually, some families will request additional payment for this receipt that they are writing in your name, because this receipt is what you would take to the land registry at Alausa for registration. That is if you want to obtain your certificate of occupancy directly with the Lagos state or with the government in your state. So the government will require that you bring a family receipt in your name, not in the name of the seller that sold to you. So it is important that investors are aware of this information, that you are not just buying the property from the seller. You are buying the property directly from the original owner of the land. I don't know if
Yeah, it makes sense. It
if
makes
I'm
sense. I
quite
totally
clear.
understand that. This is something that a good number of people do not know, and it's good that you're pointing it out on the show today. Thank you very much. So you just mentioned the governor's consent, and you talked about a receipt, which must come from the original owner or the family of the land. But there have been times when certain member of a family that has a right to a land will sign a receipt or sign a document. Another member of the family will come up and say, no, we do not know about disagreement and ask for, raise a new claim on the land? What do you do to prevent such a situation?
Land with families, it's always important that you have informations about that family. When I mean information, it comes with having the principal member of the family, the head of the family, the treasurer of the family, the secretary of the family. Usually, as a lawyer, when I draft agreements for my clients that are buying directly from the family, I always, inquire that I get all this information, because all this information will be put in the contract of sale. If you don't have this information, if they cannot provide the principal member of the family, the secretary to the family, if they cannot provide all this information, then it is that is a clear flag, a red flag for you to say, okay, this is not the property for me. Like, I cannot purchase this property because all these informations are not provided. You need to see them. They need to sign. If they don't have, if only one person is signing on behalf of the family, then there's a problem with that land, because definitely in the future, some people might just rise up and say that they are not aware of the sale, that they also have the rights to that, particular land. So it is important that you request for all these members of the family before you purchase the property.
Thank you very much, Adenike Iche, for your time on Business Insights today. But fortunately, we need to extend this conversation because we can't possibly talk about all we have on our list today. Because now I wanted to ask you, because this is one of the reasons why some people choose to deal with corporate organizations, real estate companies, because it is assumed that they would have, handled some of these issues, but in some cases we discover that it is not so, and that's why we need to really extend this conversation. So if you don't mind, we'd like to continue this tomorrow on Business Insight on Souk News. Thank you very much for your time, really, Barrister
You're
Adenike
welcome.
Iche.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed my time. Thank you so much.